We are in Mandeville, Louisiana on the north shore of Lake Pontchartrain. The quickest way to get here from New Orleans is by crossing the longest bridge over water in the world, the Causeway. Now, back in the times of Creole dominance, Bernard de Marigny even had a ferry going back and forth across the lake. But to tell the history of this area, we gotta go way back. I'm talking way back. 500 BC, it was known as the Woodland Period, and the Tchefuncte people were the earliest inhabitants of the lower Mississippi River Valley around modern-day Mandeville. Primarily, they were fishers, hunters, and collectors, and they used to make clay artifacts that have been found along the North Shore. The pottery made by the Tchefuncte people is pretty unique in appearance, and it was decorated using various techniques. Their pottery paste was crude, and their vessels typically consisted of globe-shaped jars and bowls. The Mandeville area would then be inhabited by people who followed the Marksville culture until around 400 CE, which is around when Rome fell. This culture is considered by some to be a continuation of the Tchefuncte culture that ended around the year 1. Now, the Marksville people were also incredible potters, and some of their pots that archaeologists have found have distinctive, complex curvilinear designs and visual traits that set them apart from what their predecessors made. The next tribe to take over the area was the Choctaw, but during this time, contact with Europeans was made, and the area was under French rule from around 1682 to 1763, British rule after that for about 20 years until 1783, and then the Spanish would take over until it was America. During the brief period of British control, there were several loyalist sympathizers who claimed their grants and settled. They set up charcoal and brick kilns along Bayou Castaigne and traded with tribes and businesses from New Orleans. French landowners would end up doing the same. Now, one of these families stands out above all others. There are two villages in Normandy, France named Mandeville, which means big farm in Old Norman French. The Louisiana version of Mandeville would be founded by a man named Bernard de Marigny de Mandeville in 1834. The Marigny family were extremely prominent in the early days of Louisiana, having owned over a third of the city of New Orleans and having a district named after them immediately to the east of the French Quarter. Mandeville was mainly an agricultural land, but soon became a summer destination for wealthy New Orleanians. Bernard de Marigny built his sugar plantation there and had roughly 100 slaves living and working on the grounds. To learn more about the enslaved families of this plantation, check the description of this video for a link to resources and further readings. Later, these slaves would construct a massive mansion known as Fontainebleau Plantation. It's named after the famous forest in France, and only a few ruins remain in Fontainebleau State Park. Steamboat travel soon became commonplace around the lake, just to get people to and from Mandeville. This would all come to an end during the Civil War when Union troops invaded and occupied New Orleans. During Union occupation, the Confederacy held St. Tammany Parish. A trade blockade with regular patrols along the lake put a stranglehold on Mandeville, and the owners of the wharves were told to dismantle them or Union soldiers would just burn them. After the war, businesses would return to usual, but white supremacists and Confederate sympathizers would continue to infiltrate the governments for over a century. Mandeville is a fascinating town with a rich history and a few ghost stories to add to its charm, which I'll cover on our Patreon channel. If you're ever in the area, you need to visit the Fontainebleau Mansion ruins at the Fontainebleau State Park, and keep an eye open for the ghosts of Bernard de Marigny. It's still said that he roams the grounds. I wouldn't challenge him though. He's said to be quite the duelist. Stop by the lakefront on your next Louisiana road trip, and who knows, you might just have a ghostly encounter of your own. Now, we couldn't bring you this information without your support on Patreon, and we'd like to thank all of those who have contributed and encourage anyone watching this video right now to consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/LouisianaDread. For more Louisiana history, horror, folklore, and culture, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Kyle Crosby, and this is Louisiana Dread Quick History.